Welcome to Good Chats, a show that's meant to inspire hope, wellness, and gratitude, even in the midst of crisis. I'm your host, Jenny Landon, and with a team of incredible people, we've put together a lineup of shows where we share stories with the hope of ending stigma and raising awareness while offering education on mental health and saving lives. Before we get started, let me thank our sponsors, Kowalski's in Shoreview and Doug Dezurek Construction. We couldn't do this show without you guys. On tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about our need for control. Now, I personally have no idea why we're talking about this because I've actually turned all the control over to my good friend, Mike James. So I want to welcome Mike back to the show and remind everyone that he is the author of The Secrets of a Life Coach audio series. I got it right that time.
You did. You did.
I did. And then I also want to welcome back Dr. Erik Reis, who is a chiropractic functional neurologist who I can say I've gone to see in his clinic, and it was well worth the investment. I feel like I really learned a lot about my brain and how it works.
Good.
It gave me a lot of control because I actually allowed myself to let go and acknowledge
about to tear
that,
this up. No, just kidding.
that I don't know what I'm doing half the time. If you guys haven't noticed that, while I like to be in control, I find that when I just tell people I'm about to lose it or I did just lose it, then I feel better. And so, Mike, I mean, in all honesty, like this, you and I've talked for months. I mean, almost a year now on getting this show off the ground. And you were someone that I really just have loved from the moment we met. And this was a topic that was really important to you. Tell us why.
Well, so I've coached over 800 clients, life coaching clients, since 2010. And that is the one word that is brought up all the time in coaching conversations. And if you listen, you'll hear it in everyday conversations as well. You know, people always talking about, like, if I only had more control, I'm losing control. I can only control the things that I am able. And yet, when surprises happen, like you said, when you had a breakdown or you lost it, you felt better. And I was so curious about that word control because I'd hear about it constantly, knowing that the end result for all living things is the same thing. Like, it either goes away or changes to something else one day. In the grand scheme of things, you don't have control over anything. And I always try to live my life starting with the opposite of control. So I actually went over to Thesaurus one day, opened it up and looked up the opposite of control. And just a question for you guys, what do you think the opposite of control is?
Chaos comes to mind.
I hear that a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
He's already filled me in, so I feel like it wouldn't
man.
be fair. I wouldn't be
You
fair.
need a secret.
So, or I can pretend to be really, really smart. You guys want me to tell you? No, I'm gonna let you. No, I want you to, because it really blew me away when you shared with me what the opposite of control is.
Sure.
What is it?
I do hear a lot. Chaos is one big thing, or busyness or craziness. The opposite of control is freedom. And when you ask people what they want most out of life, not really the cashier at the grocery store, although you can, but when you ask people what they want most of life, most people say, I want to be happy. And then when you ask them to break that down further, the majority of people either can't answer the question because they don't know, or they say they want more freedom. And if we're all busy running around trying to control things, it eliminates surprises, and you're not, and I don't know, life is one big surprise if you allow it in. Because it's going to happen anyway, as we know.
Absolutely. And before I ask you why this is important, I will touch on the fact that the whole reason we're doing this show today is because a year ago, totally out of nowhere, I was asked to be on an episode of Show Us Your Nonprofit, right? And then it turned into this amazing show and opportunity. And I have to say, I've never wanted to be on camera. Have never thought of myself as being on TV. It's terrifying for me.
Right.
And because I won't have control. I don't know what I look like right now. I don't know how my hair is or my posture or anything like that. And all these people are watching me, and it feels terrifying. And at the same time, we end this episode, and I mean, every single episode we've ended, I am so beyond excited and thrilled about what's going on, you know, with this project and in my life. And so I think you're right. Like, even though I really love control, this was a surprise that's been amazing.
Awesome.
Erik, tell us, why are you interested in this?
Well, how much time do we have here? You know, I think control is a really interesting concept. You know, from my perspective, seeing patients, people come to me with a problem. and they expect me to help them find a solution. I am in some way, shape, or form trying to control some factor in their life. That's a heavy load. And so fortunately, we've gone to school, I've learned about the body and the brain, all that stuff. We don't always have full control over everything. And I think that's one of the difficult aspects with not only seeing patients, but just having personal relationships, and who you are at home may be different than who you are in the office. And it all comes down to trying to figure out how you manage your life. And control is something that we all think of as like, well, I need to be able to control this or that. But as you get into the real world, it's very tough to control a majority of the things in our lives. And so for those who follow Stoicism and philosophy and look at a life of trying to control what you can do and try not to control what other people can do, we all get caught in that game. So from a coaching perspective, from just a life perspective, control is everywhere. We all deal with it in some way, shape, or form. It's just whether or not you're more aware of it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, Mike, you have a theory, right? And you're going to share
Not
your
saying
theory.
I'm right or wrong, but yep.
But you've posed the question of where does the idea that we need to control, where does that come from? What's your theory?
Well, first, I love the question, and first off,
That's good because it's your question.
That's why I love the question. I was controlling this agenda some day earlier last week.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right? Yeah. What a great question that I.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
I love root causes. I love, and what I think is interesting about your work is you and I both work with the body. I pride myself on doing some deep coaching where we get to people's emotions. When those are released, some amazing physical things have changed for people. And of course, you adjusting and shifting and getting people on nutrition, those things are really important. And one of the root causes, I think, from the moment we're a child who's curious and our eyes are open and we're wondering about the world, the first time we're told no, and the series of no's that happen after that, you start to condition yourself on how you're supposed to approach things, who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to manage yourself in front of others. And then there's things like your religion comes into play, where provided you're a religious person, if you are, you're conditioned that these are the sets of rules to follow, and eventually you get put in a box of control where I don't find it that interesting to question who made the box and where did that come from. And eventually, if you're carrying around the box into your adulthood, that's when you're at an age where I believe you're responsible enough to look at the box and either tear it down or see where it came from and do whatever you want with that. But there's so much freedom outside of that box should you do that deep personal work.
I find it interesting too. Bruce Lipton is a PhD geneticist, studied at University of Manitoba, Wisconsin, stem cells, and looking at all these different factors about what causes our genes to express different proteins. And we all came from the same family, right? But we all have different attributes. How does that happen? He's done a lot of research into this about thoughts and beliefs and emotions, and he's kind of come to the point where he's formulated kind of a percentage, like we live most of our day 5% consciously, cognitively. And the other 95% is based off of subconscious beliefs and things that have happened, way before we even have memories or conscious memories of like our early childhood. So the experiences that we have in early development, whether it's in utero, adolescence, these early stages of our development, really affect us later in life. If you're not open to searching for that, if you're not looking for ways to investigate why you act or why you feel in a specific way, you're kind of immersed in your physiology and your environment, whether or not you think that environment was ideal for you to grow up in.
Yeah.
Right?
So let me break this down for everyone who doesn't understand their language and what they're saying right now. I'm going to share an example. I grew up very shy and quiet and didn't speak, and my perception of myself was that that's who I am until I feel safe, right? That's just who I am. I go into environments, I learn what's going on, and then I will come out of my shell and show them who I really am. Until August 10th of 2018. And it was right before my 40th birthday. And I was showing up for an event that my sister convinced me to go to. And I agreed to go. And she was actually a speaker at this event. And she said, okay, By the way, I told all the other speakers and crew how amazing and outgoing and fun and assertive and independent you are, and how you just get the party started. And oh, by the way, setup starts at 1 and I don't land until 2:30. And I was like, oh, what did you just say? No. And
Do you still love her at this point?
I do.
Okay.
Actually, I do. And so, in fact, I think it's partly because of all of that I'm sitting here with a TV show right now.
Right.
Because what ended up happening was I had a choice to make. I could be that person that I always grew up thinking I was, or I could be this person that she had set the expectation for me to be. And so I got off the plane at like 8:30 in the morning, and I went and played golf and got centered because I discovered I love golf and it makes me happy, which sounds crazy. If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I'd say no. But again, it was another thing that in my head I had to shift, right? And then I got back to the hotel where the event was taking place, and I met up with the team, and I immediately jumped right in. And I was everything that she had told them that I could be. And at the end of that 3-day event, I realized what an amazing time I had every second, right? I didn't take time to warm up. I just went ahead and was the person that she believed I could be. And even when I was here and I did that little 5-minute segment afterward, and I really believe a lot of it came from that one event, was the station manager, Tim, who I love, came up to me and he just said, I loved what you did on the show. I love what you do with your nonprofit. How can we support you? And I looked at him and I had one opportunity, right? That I could either be mousy and just say thank you and leave, or I could say, and this is what I said, I'm going to be bold in this moment and tell you that we shouldn't be talking about mental health only during Suicide Prevention Month and Mental Health Month. We need to be talking about this every day. And he said, I like that you're bold. Can you come in next week, right? Beautiful. But I had to be consciously aware of how my past was affecting who I am today. There, did I break that down for everybody so they can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you dropped your control in that moment, just went with whatever is going to happen.
I did.
Went for the freedom.
I did.
Yep.
I did.
Well, look at what a great benefit it was, too. I forget what I was reading the other day, but we've all had this experience where you have a friend and you go to an event together and all of a sudden they kind of act differently. Yeah. Or you go around them with their family and they act a little bit differently and they almost act as if there's a set expectation that wasn't communicated but they have to fulfill, right? So in your instance, your sister put you up and said, hey, this is Jenny. Is she your older sister or younger sister?
She's my older sister.
Perfect, right? So older siblings, we get that, right? I get that. She set you up for success.
She did.
In a way that she didn't communicate to you that she was going to do this to you until it was too late.
Right.
And she knew that you had that in you the entire time.
Yeah.
She just had to pull it out. And you, to a point, probably knew that as well. You were just in some way, shape, or form sticking to something that kept you safe, keeping in control. But at that same moment, she allowed you to have even more control, potentially over a future, and here we are today. Yeah. So, and I'm sure, Mike, you've experienced that with your coaching clients as well.
Absolutely. I used to have incredible success with people who suffered from fibromyalgia. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Chronic pain.
Chronic pain, like extreme tightness and chronic pain in the muscles. And one day I made a doctor appointment for myself, just a yearly physical. And I went in there and I was telling my doctor, who's just the nicest guy in the world and actually asks about you and takes the time, and he asked me, what have you been doing these days? And I was telling him about coaching. I told him I strangely have really good success with people who have fibromyalgia. And he was like, well, tell me what you do. I'm like, it's just a conversation that I have with most people. And when it gets deeper, if I somehow in the conversation, through my questions, get the person to cry, I'll ask them in that moment, where's your pain right now? And they typically will tell me, like, I don't feel it. And my doctor told me if people are not sweating or crying, working out or crying, that stuff gets stored and it turns into pain. And you're probably releasing pain in different things, and releasing emotions is super powerful. And where that comes to control, if we are so tight and holding things in and not letting them be released for fear of either how it looks, for fear of people think everything will change if you have a breakdown, and again, people are really, really obsessed with comfort versus letting that really important stuff out.
Right.
There's not much healing, and we just kind of stick to a really tight.
Well, I think people don't want to feel the pain, right?
People
They don't want to
pain.
feel the
Right.
emotional pain of that release of letting go. But what they don't realize is that pain will manifest.
Right.
It will go inward. And I know you and I, we talked when I came in to see you last week to understand why my brain is doing some of the things that it's doing, and just to help me, get some clarity. And we talked about, that there's 4 things. I remembered it as 4 things. But I imagine you see a lot of patients who come in who feel out of control, and they're searching for control because they've been struggling with pain or ailments or feeling sick for so long. And, not everyone has the means to get in to see a doctor, or they don't have the time or the ability, and for whatever reason. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, which I probably should have told you what those 4 things were if you don't remember, but like, what are some things that someone could do that is feeling out of control? What are some steps that they could take where we don't want to have too much control, but we don't want to feel out of control either? So what can they do to manage their pain and their stress on their own?
Well, great. It's a great question. It comes back to nobody's ever taught, well, me personally, but in general, no one's taught us how to be vulnerable. And really how to effortlessly make mistakes and then get back up and be okay. Yeah. Everyone fears of getting a bad grade in school. Everyone fears of letting somebody else down, but those are growing opportunities for us. And in many cases and situations, we're better off because of it. I take a look at health and people coming in with chronic pain and anything under the sun that involves the human and the body. Pain is one of the biggest drivers for people to change. And when you're looking at triggers for pain, sure, there are structural things, there are neurological things, and there are nutritional things that we can do for it, but I think one of the first things that people need to do is they need to have a conversation with somebody about it. Because I can't tell if somebody's in pain, whether it's musculoskeletal-wise from the body, or whether it's cognitive because they struggle with stress or anxiety, or they just need somebody to just talk to feel like they belong. And I think pain is such a broad indicator that something is going awry. Right? We can't always tell you exactly what that is or why that is, but we know that the brain can generate pain, even without you actually having any pain. And that's kind of a lot of cases with fibromyalgia. We know that the brain changes based off that. It's not just one joint or one reason or one factor. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, you're changing your client's brains for better. And that's exactly what we all want.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just take a doctor or a counselor or a therapist. It can be anybody, but it all starts the conversation. And I think that's kind of the basis of all this too, is we have to be open and available to be receiving that. But also, we're also vulnerable in some way, shape, or form too. Have the conversation, find somebody to connect with, and then create steps to move forward with it.
And I think a good test to see if you are in massive control or not is to, why don't you go sit by yourself for a half hour every single day for the next 2 weeks? No books, no iPhone, no music, no TV, and just sit and see what comes up. And the brain will show you how much you're in control, how you get distracted from yourself. And I just think it's a very, very important piece to start to get to know yourself outside of all the things that all the stories you've built up. And it's scary, and it's vulnerable and powerful. And the majority of people I ask, like, would you ever take a trip by yourself? And I don't mean you're backpacking or you're going, like, you go to a place and sit for, 8 to 10 hours and just sit there. And you could have a journal to write in if something suits you every now and then, but sit there and do that for a week. And the majority of people are terrified. And I ask them, like, what are you afraid of? Like, I just always need something to do. I'm like, and what happens if you don't? And just keep asking. But it's interesting that we're not being, which is the freedom, because we're so used to doing and controlling everything and being so busy.
No, I know you talked about where control can be helpful. So where is it that in our lives that we should be having that ambition to have control? Where is it helpful for us?
Yeah, I want to be really, really respectful about, obviously there's people in domestic abuse relationships and things like that where you're being controlled and you might have children, you have to take precautionary steps to make sure people are safe. And it's just, as a human being, you have to be emotionally smart, emotionally intelligent. You need to be a little bit in control for a job interview. Here, I'm not going to put my feet up and offer you a cigarette, and I'm assuming you don't smoke. I don't either, you know. But as a human being, there's pieces of control you have to have. So it is necessary to get by in life. But I think as an adult and as you grow older and kind of re-fall in love with yourself from when you were that little kid, that after all those no's were piled on, you start peeling them back. That you don't need it as much as you think you do.
So you just triggered a thought in me. This past Saturday, I flew to San Antonio and I gave a talk on, it was actually for a conference on inner beauty, and my talk was on self-love. And what was really interesting is, as I was preparing for this talk, one, I realized that I've never told myself I love you. And so that changed, which was a really amazing experience, but I don't have enough time to go into that. Why I'm bringing it up is because what shocked me on your plethora of paperwork that I had to fill out to come see you, one of the questions was, do you love yourself? And I was like, well, yes, I do. And I squared it because I like lines and I like boxes and I like control. Circles are too messy. What shocked me was the next question. And it said, how much do you love yourself on a scale of 0 to 100? And it was like I punched my gut. Because I've been working on this talk for weeks. And I've been struggling, actually. I've been struggling to write this talk. And that question, when I read it, I was like, I want to put 100%, but I had a bad interaction with my child today. I don't feel like I was a good wife. I feel like I could have done this talk better. I could have done this. And I was like, so I'm going to put 90. And Saturday morning, as I was prepping for my talk, which you'll be so proud of me because it was the best talk I've ever given in my life. And I think part of it was because of strategies that you gave me. But I decided that I would do a run while I practiced my talk. So I had my bullet points in front of me and I was running, and I got to that part where I wanted to talk about, you know, the fact that I got to this question and that I only put 90%. And the moment I thought it, I heard my daughter's voice. And I heard her say, I didn't want to tell you because I was scared you wouldn't love me. And I thought, I will always love you, right? Like, that is what I told my child. I might not like everything you do, but I will always love you. And in that instant, I realized I love myself 100%. I just don't always like what I do. And I think that I'm totally off topic in my mind right now, but I feel like we need to see more of that. We don't need to have massive egos in a negative way, but we need to see more self-love and just awareness of who we are is good, you know?
What do you think it's in the way of people for seeing more of that in other people, or us showing that?
Right, because I do. Like, I feel like, and I talked about this with my children, when I asked them if they love themselves, and you know, my one child said no, and when we finally got to the root of it, because I was like, well, but you love these characteristics in so-and-so, and you love her, and those are characteristics you have. It's when our insecurities get in the way, and our insecurities feel so much bigger than the things that we're good at or the things that we love about ourselves, and we let those insecurities take over.
And then,
that's what I think. Yeah.
I don't know what you think about this, but and then you control your behavior and control your reactions to things on how they look outside versus showing things from the inside out.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes.
And then your insecurities turn into beliefs, which turn into actions, and then habits. We're creatures of habits, and why would you ever think about your daily routine, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, we're kind of preaching to the choir between us of self-reflection and going in, but powerful statements such as I ams, not I will be or I want to be, but I am, like present moment confirmations can be huge. We know that they change the brain. We know that they change people's habits over time too. And that confidence is very different. Like you don't, like you said, like you love yourself, but you may not always like the decisions that you make. Well, welcome to humanity, right?
Right.
I mean, our brains aren't perfect,
right.
and neither should we expect to be, but we have this perfectionist mentality with social media and everyone else's lives, or everything's greener on the other side, but everybody has their own stuff. It's just we may not always communicate that. And it once again just comes back to having that conversation and being open and just really being vulnerable, and that's a very okay thing to be, as we've all experienced.
Yeah. Well, and I think a place where control is important is kind of where you're touching on self-control, right? And it's not just our behaviors when we're interacting with other people, and this is where I'll circle back with both of you, what I was trying to get at with you when we were in the appointment that made such an impact on me was in having awareness and self-control in the foods we're eating. So recognizing when we're eating food that our body can't process, and whether it's our body can't process it ever, or maybe it's just right now because we're not well, but giving it time to heal, but being in tune with knowing that, some foods can cause you to not like yourself, can cause you to not like other people. So when we eat something that our body doesn't agree with, it's not always a stomach ache. Sometimes if you go from being in a great mood to a foul mood, what did you just eat? Or what product did you just put on your skin? And being aware of that, having that self-control too of don't overindulge, right? I was so good and I ate so clean leading up to my 2 talks last week. And then I celebrated by inhaling homemade tortillas and queso.
They sound amazing regardless.
They were amazing.
Do we have any in the
But
studio?
can I just tell you, the next day I woke up with a migraine.
Yeah.
I hurt so bad. I was in a bad mood. And I just went, you know what? If I'd had one, I would have loved every second of it. But I had like 5 or maybe more. And, and I woke up the next day and I hurt so bad, which then affected the way I could see myself and interact with other people,
Yeah, and a version of control I have if we want to be vulnerable here is I will be really hard on myself I love working out. I love seeing the results of it, and I love feeling good. And that's a little bit of control, how I look.
Yeah.
But you better believe on a Saturday night or a Friday night, I earn that stomach ache when I get my Chinese food, anything dipped in ranch, syrup, meth. No, I'm just kidding. But I love letting that go for a little bit and that's my freedom of just letting me have what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're all guilty. I mean, I was raised on boxed cereals and foods that had a longer shelf life than what I may have on this earth. I mean, honestly,
Right.
a lot of the things that we are putting into our bodies and feeding our children are things that should not, they're never going to rot. I mean, if you've ever seen Super Size Me and McDonald's and all that stuff, it's a scary, interesting world with our food.
Right.
Psychologists are using, and psychiatrists as well, are using nutrition and supplementation in various forms of food to change people's psychology. They're treating depression and anxiety with different types of bacteria, probiotics, prebiotics, different types of foods, different types of dietary things. They're obviously using exercise. I mean, all these things affect us in some way, shape, or form. But more importantly, too, the things we put in our bodies actually affect the way we think, which is a new concept. I mean, 20 years ago, if you'd have said that to somebody, they'd look at you and they'd think you're a little crazy. In 2019, we know far more about the brain and the body and our immune system and our gut, and we're just scratching the surface on how all of that stuff affects us. So,
and I'll take it a step further from not just what we're putting in our body, but honestly what we're putting on our body.
Agreed.
And I had an experience almost a year ago where I bought this ridiculous lotion because it claimed to have all of these amazing powers. And I put a drop, the size of a dime, right? Just on my face and neck. And did it exactly the way I was supposed to. Within a couple of hours, I didn't feel safe to drive, right? I didn't immediately recognize what it was from, but I then, by the end of the night, I was in a depressive state that would rival my postpartum depression. And in that moment, I was alone. My husband was traveling, and I was sitting in his office crying. And I got up because I knew something was wrong and that my body had something in it that I needed to detox. And so I went and found my daughter, and I said, I need your help. I can't do this by myself. Will you come do a workout with me? And I couldn't even run because I didn't have the strength, but I walked and I started sweating and I started feeling better. And so I always try to encourage people, be aware of what you're putting in your body and on your body. So you guys, we're out of time. If you very quickly, because this was all about you tonight, Mike.
Thank you.
What's one final thought that you have for us?
I would just say, instead of people saying, have a good day, and I wrote something about this recently, let the day have a genuine, authentic you, no matter what that is, versus having a good day. You're not in control of it.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen, and just embrace that.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're going to sign off. Let me thank our sponsors, especially Kowalski's and Shoreview. Also, please go visit our website, growingoutofdarkness.org, and follow us on Facebook. We will be posting these episodes there, and we want your feedback. Until next time, be good to yourself and to others.